So is streaming important to you? My basic answer is generally probably no. Players will go ahead and fake that just fine. And before addressing the numbers that this slide shows, let's say, why is there streaming media anyway? For a couple of reasons. Simulcast and multicast purposes, but the major push for doing those was really to make sure that you couldn't capture the download. That was the real reason. Now, there are technologies that will capture that download and save it to a file for you, but that's the real reason that YouTube uses streaming, so that you can't grab the file. Looking at these numbers, you see that even in January 2007, they showed only less than 80 million users in the US. So I don't think the numbers are themselves what you really need to look at here. You really need to look kind of at the magnitudes, and even it gets more puzzling when you talk about across the major three players with statistics from the same source, Nielsen, presumably, that goes back to 2000 and goes forward to 2009. If you try and take each of their numbers and put them in a graph, you get something that looks really nuts. You know, like there's a big high number, 30 million in 2000, and suddenly it drops off to 17 million in 2001, and you're thinking, no, this can't be right. So there's something funny about the numbers, but what you really need to understand is the players are out there. Flash also does something with their thing, and they talk about this 99% of support across the board for them. They're actually lying quite dramatically, as it turns out. But you'll notice also on here that Apple's QuickTime and the Real Player are on there, the two other common players, but not Windows Media Player. Why'd they leave them off? Well, that's an interesting question. If we do put them back in, and they used to have them in there, they used to say like 83% support. I suspect they took them off because they got called for lying, but that's just a suspicion of mine. Really, it's probably more likely that 92 to 95% have Windows Media Player on their machine. If you combine Real Player, though, and QuickTime and Windows Media Player, you're really at about 99.8% support, more than Flash. If you add in the other approximately 0.2% of people that do want to play .mpg files, surprise, surprise, and there are people that don't want to play .mpg files. They won't have any such thing as a player on there. They just want raw HTML pages, and that's what they're going to use. So you see that really, and this doesn't talk about mobile. iPhones, iBooks don't support Flash. Yep, zip, not yet, maybe never. That's one of those undecideds yet. So you're cutting out that entire range of folks going to Flash. This slide just shows that there's some lag in technology acceptance for things. It takes time for things to move through the process. Let's look most importantly at this 1.8% down here is what the Flash people themselves tell us. And that's still, I've guesstimated that up to maybe 2% worldwide because the rest of the world is not as current on Flash. That's just basing some guesses on the numbers and the progression that still aren't current. And that's based on that 1.8% number that they give. We can also find on the web statistics where people have done other studies other than self-reported Flash. And one of the basic problems with those self-reported things is that Flash mostly gets their stuff from self-reports from self-selected reporters. Well, the high-tech people are going to be the ones that are going to self-select as the reporters. I mean, that's just a built-in bias in the way, gathering statistics works. The people that are embarrassed or don't have the current stuff aren't going to be self-selecting to be reporters. That's just the way the thing works. So folks have Flash, but it's not as widespread necessarily as you'd like to see. I tried to find numbers on ratios, 4.3 versus 16 to 9. Everything supports 4.3 or 4 to 3 ratios. 16 to 9 is a little more iffy. I'm not sure what happens there. It was clearly supported in the 1.0 MPEG specifications, and nobody has trouble playing those. If you look at what YouTube recommends, their 1280 by 720 upload, and you compare that to available screen resolutions of web users, you see real quick that, whoops, there's some 170 million screens that won't play a full YouTube. Okay, that's life. And what is broadband anyway? This thing keeps reporting high numbers. This one currently says 92.1%. But 144 kilobits per second is counted as broadband. Try that with a flash video and see if you think that's broadband. That's only 3 times a fast modem as far as speed goes. It's not much in the way of broadband. A couple of final things about the minimums that Microsoft recommends for processors and for playing videos, and you can just see the sizes there. And I would guess that, and since doubling video dimensions actually quadruples the uncompressed size of the files, I would guess that you're going to have to be talking about 1.5 gigahertz and 256 megabytes of memory for good playback for a full YouTube experience. Here's a surprise. It happens all the time. This just happened to crop up while I was doing my digging for statistics, and that is a thoroughly modern browser, modern Firefox, modern XP computer, high, 3 gigahertz, etc., etc. But it didn't play the video on this, and it yelled at me again because of JavaScript being turned off and the video player. Both were current on the machine. Well, that's what you see when you go to the video in this particular case. And me, by some finagling and some knowledge, it was able to actually get it to play. Will your users be able to do that? Improbable for a large percent of them. I'd like to see you serving everybody. And my last slide, is that really what you want to see? Or do you want to serve more inclusively than that? Thank you.